Hello, Michael Kahn here again for video number 3 in my uh, adventure here with teaching you what my book says and inform you of my candidacy for presidency and the issues I take up. Now, we do not live in a democracy. Yes, it's called a republic. We have democratic processes, we're told. But think about it. We're given a choice between a few usual lawyers, once in a while an actor or a rich man, and they're all rich. And they're all going to get richer by the positions. You aren't going to get somebody often, a man like me, a poor man of the people. You can get a rich man, a lawyer, with issues they tell you, with the choices of stand they tell you they take, and you have to choose from one lawyer or another, or one rich man or one lawyer, of what your choices are. Yeah. And the issue and how they're going to vote, and either vote for one guy's going to put one stand, and the other guy another stand, when they both work for the same people. Obviously, this is not democracy. It is a republic with lies put on it so that we cannot get what we need and want. It is a hegemony ruled by the rich. Now, representatives lie every time and never vote and never legislate as they promise us they are. Now, let us go in here and look at my book. We last talked about the revolution in America. And I got something else to say. Understand. Let's go. In the revolution, our founding fathers here in America basically signed a document, a peace document with the King of England. The Vatican was involved. And guess what that it said? Here, I'm going to give you the first few words from the document, the treaty they signed. It having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent Prince George the Third, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lauenburg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire and Church, and of the United States of America. Let's translate that. Which says, translated, the king claims that the Pope is the vicar of Christ, of somebody who never existed, and that God gave the king power to declare that no man can ever own property because it goes against the tenets of the church and the Vatican and the Holy Roman Church, and because he's the elector of the Holy Roman Empire. And our founding fathers, being Freemasons, all signed to it. Okay. Now, furthermore, soon after that, in 1822, that was signed, by the way, that peace treaty with England was signed in 1785. In 1822, they had the Treaty of Verona, which is basically between the King of England, King George, between the Pope, the Vatican, and several leaders, world leaders, United States leaders, which basically said, number one, that they were going to restrict representative power, countries, representative governments, because they diminish the power of the Pope, the Vatican, and the ruling power and rich people. Number two, it basically said that they were going to get rid of the freedom of the press, because that also diminished the power of the Vatican and the ruling rich powers. And furthermore, the third thing they put on, they were going to promote religion, especially Christianity, Catholicism, because it was designed, its nature promoted submissiveness and obedience to the ruling powers. Let that sink in a little bit. Okay. Now let's go on and see what happened in the beginning of our country. Okay, we had basically a civil war. Yeah, civil war. Basically, where our revolution of the blood, basically the Civil War was started by the South. They were seceding from the Union. That was the original cause, and the Union forces wanted to prevent that from happening. The Union forces did not fight with great gusto. They weren't sure it was really a righteous cause, making sure they stayed in our country. The states wanted to secede. So it was a piece of genius that Lincoln basically made it all about slavery. Oh, we're going to free the slaves. That's what it's really about, he says. And so then all of a sudden they started fighting with gusto. They had purpose in their war, and they went to fight. And they won. And basically, Lincoln, however, when he's campaigning for president in the southern states, he said he would not abolish slavery. He said he had no lawful right to. But it changed matters when they went to secede from the Union. They weren't voting for him anymore. Okay. I'm going to basically quote a little quote from Lincoln. Basically, what he said um, after the Civil War and the North had won. Here are Lincoln's words in a speech. There's an unwillingness on the part of our people, as harsh as it may be, for you free colored people to remain with us. But even when you come to be even when you cease to be slaves, you are yet removed from being placed on an equality with the white race. The aspiration of men is to enjoy equality with the best when free. But on this broad continent, not a single man of your race is made equal to of a single man of ours. I cannot alter it if I would. It is a fact. It is better for us both, therefore, to be separated. Let that sink in about your wonderful Lincoln. What a great president he was for freeing the slaves. So understand something. I read that speech. I had done my research, found the Bible's lies. I debunked it. I wrote exposing the money machine, proved that the media is full of lies, that we've been fed lies, and much more. Exposed a whole lot. And I was put in prison for writing that book. They made up other excuses, but when I entered the jailhouse, the guards told me they're researching how well the book sold. They're going to research everything about me. All my friends and affiliates would be researched. They knew all about everything I did from the age of 10. They told me what I did. I didn't tell them. They told me what I did when I was like 10, 15, 20 years old because they were researching me. You want to see if I was a terrorist or whatever. Of course, I'm not. I'm very clean. They let me out 4 months early because I'm squeaky clean and have solutions, not just pointing out the evils in our nation. I have solutions. But basically, I asked them, because I'd put together all the pieces, not all of them yet then, but because I've seen the truth, I basically, want to be released to a place in Newark, a black urban city. And I want to be in a poor area, in a shelter with the black people. Why? I had grown up in white suburban Christian America. I was a member of a white church. I taught Bible. I did ministry. I've been an activist for 30 years helping the poor. But not that many blacks. I never lived with blacks. I had helped them. I've been with them, but I never lived with them until I went to prison. And I got to know their culture in prison. It was far better than the white culture I'd grown up with. I basically grew to love the black people. Now I'm a black separatist. Now, of course, I'm white, white skin. And of course, not all whites are bad. Most whites are good. But it's a white establishment that is pure evil. Just like, what I'm going to get to tell you is that basically understand. The white southern gentlemen were willing to kill hundreds of thousands of blacks and whites, have their own property decimated, be killed themselves to make sure that they did not lose their dominance over the black people they enslaved. That is their character. People don't wash over the true character. And they still do it today, but now you're called employees, laboring employees, unskilled labor employees of minimum wage. Same thing as slavery. Same thing. But not a lot better, but still, you're still slaves compared to billionaires and trillionaires who make much more off your work than you do. Now, let us go into this a little deeper. After the Civil War, there was a Reconstruction era. And the humanitarians and aid societies sub schools and churches for the black people. So no longer were they in chains of labor and oppression. Now they're chains of limited thinking and wrong thinking, subversive thinking, and religion to impose in their minds and destroy their minds, make them submissive, wrong thinking, superstitious, wrong values, wrong information in schools like they teach the white people. So understand, the slavery never ended. Then the Reconstruction era, where they basically, the Southerners said that they were put in political slavery by the people who hated them. The Northerners hated them, scalawags and carpetbaggers and black politicians who the Southerners said hated them. That myth was debunked by people, by intellectuals who basically did not see the true nature of the white Southern gentlemen. Yes, they debunked their lies. They're pathological liars, but they didn't see the true nature. Could not criticize them as deep as they needed to, because these people are pathological liars and evil to the core. Of course, not all whites. Most whites are okay. They're good. I'm white myself. They're not all racist, but they're deceived. They think that these rulers that rule over us all, and I'll describe later much later, you'll see all the facts and figures. They think that they're just mistaken here and there. The politicians are mistaken. Look at your op-eds of your newspapers. People come up with good solutions, more intelligent, better than their politicians. The politicians can't seem to come to any collaboration and agreement to have something positive happen in legislation. They seem to be in too much disagreement. The opposite party always disagrees and stops any good legislation from happening. They always seem to come up with things that favor the rich and are harmful to the poor. Just a coincidence, I guess, huh? They're unable to come with intelligent solutions that you can find op-eds by ordinary people right and left. No, that's just not the case. These politicians and lawyers, they're highly intelligent. They're geniuses. And geniuses, like actors, can pretend to be ignorant, stupid, confused, innocent, well-meaning, mistaken, but unable to come to right conclusions, but, be misled. No, these people are highly intelligent. They know exactly what they're doing. They're actors. Politicians are nothing more than actors. They're not even making the legislation. That's creating the Council of Foreign Relations. Their job is to deceive the people into thinking that is where our laws are made and how they are made. That is their job. The real legislation is made in the Council on Foreign Relations. And what you see, these politicians are nothing but actors like WWF wrestlers, World Federation wrestlers, basically pretending to be against one another and pretending to have our well-being as part of their purpose. That's just a lie. Simple. Now, let's go on. Okay, in 1905, these things are happening in other places in the world. In 1905, the Mensheviks, moderate socialists, did a revolution in Russia and were defeated because Paris and London gave the Tsar $400 million to defeat these moderate socialists who tried to rebel against the Tsar in Russia. Then, shortly later, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. The Federal Reserve was created by bankers and a couple politicians, mostly bankers, created in 1910 in Jekyll Island. In 1913, it was made law. And let's read what Lindbergh, a certain Congressman Lindbergh Sr., father of the aviator, basically said about this Federal Reserve creation here, the Federal Reserve Act. This act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. When the president signs this act, the invisible government, by the money power, proved to exist by the money trust investigation, will be legalized. The new law will create inflation whenever the trust wants inflation. From now on, depression will be scientifically created. Okay, so you got a picture of what happened. Let's go into further and what somebody else said about it. What McFadden, another politician, said about it. Let's see if I can follow. Here it is. Okay. Louis McFadden was chairman of the House Committee on Banking and Currency. Here's his words concerning the Federal Reserve. When the Federal Reserve Act was passed, the people of the United States did not perceive that a world banking system was being set up here. A superstate controlled by international bankers and international industrialists acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. Every effort has been made by the Fed to conceal its powers, but the truth is the Fed has usurped the government. Bankers. Let me continue. It controls everything here, and it controls all our foreign relations. It makes and breaks governments at will. Now, do you see what happened here? Okay. Now, let's go to World War I, which Woodrow Wilson, his campaign was funded by the banker Morgan, he allowed the Federal Reserve to be formed, mostly by the banker Morgan. And let's hear why we entered World War I. And here it's going to tell you. Okay, this is from a book called The World Since 1500, A Global History by L.S. Stavrianos. And this is quoted from page 448. You see, I do a little bit of reading. I do a lot of reading research. Okay. Now, another factor operating in favor of intervention was the American financial and industrial commitment to the Allied cause. Now, let me just break in here and say that Wilson at first had said he would not get involved in World War I, but we did, and this is why. Bryan foresaw this pressure and waged and then urged from the beginning a moral embargo of arms or loans to belligerents. In other words, not to loan to European powers, not to give them arms. This is rejected by Wilson. So by the end of 1914, the House of Morgan was already coordinating Allied purchases of war material from the United States. To pay for these purchases, the Allied powers first gave cash, then sold the bonds and stocks they held in the United States, and finally had to resort to large-scale borrowing. This situation eventually generated the American involvement in the war. Booming industries in the United States were dependent on continued Allied orders, while American bankers had safes full of British and French paper that would become worthless if Germany emerged victorious. So you see something. We have here the emergence of the industrial military complex started in World War I under Wilson, a bigot bought by Morgan, allowed the Federal Reserve to happen. He was a damn bad president. And now we were in World War I. And how did we get in there? Because by the Creel Commission, a method of propaganda devised by the United States, developed by the United States, to start us in hatred of the Huns, as Germans were then called, because we grew to hate them because of the Creel Commission, which followed propaganda as developed by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Freud, using psychology, methods in the Bible and the Vatican to convince people to do things they would not ordinarily do and to leave their sense of reason and research. Propaganda. Okay, you got it? Now, this is followed basically in 1917. The Russian radical communists, Lenin, Trotsky, and the rest, were financed by bankers to overcome the Russian Tsar. These are radicals. They weren't the socialist moderates. These were radical communists funded by the bankers to start communism in Russia. Now, I'll end with that, and you can cogitate a little bit what I just told you, and think a bit about our leadership. Okay, Michael Kahn, try to have a good day. I'm the author of Exposing the Money Machine, The Untold Nature of Christianity, and Angry, Loud, and Clear Truth. And everything I write here and read here and talk to you about is scientific fact. After thousands of hours of research, not believing what I'm told. You can either believe me and the book and scientific fact and research it yourself, or you can go back to school where they tell you what books to read, to memorize and learn by what they tell you and lecture to you without asking for any, without allowing any challenging or questioning, and where you basically show how smart you are with food questions and multiple choice, and learning how to memorize and obey. That's a real good school system, huh? Yeah. And that's how they tell you the truth. What they tell you is the truth. What the historians who they promote will tell you, and you better believe, or else you fail and never get a job. So you understand how they work. Yeah, called propaganda, lies, deceptions, manipulations, and fear of poverty and eventually jail if you don't pay your debts. You understand. Because they love you. They're your rulers.